Hi guys, my name is Jack Gardell. I'm a senior studying neuroscience with a minor in medical humanities, and I'm super excited to be here.
Hi, it's Molly. Welcome to my mod. This is Modcast, the show where I highlight current and past eags who make waves on and off the heights. Come on in. Hello, I'm so excited to have you on the show today, Jack. Do you want to give us a brief rundown of your involvements at BC to start off?
So one of the main things I do here is I am the co-president of Special Olympics Boston College. Another one of my main involvements is I'm a student leader on Appa. I am leading a trip this year with my co-lead Ellie Sullivan to Summersville, West Virginia, and I was an orientation leader this summer.
What drew you to each of those activities? Because a lot of people have different combinations of things on campus. I want to know what about those specifically made you want to give your time to them?
For me, a lot of them were past experiences that I've done in high school, and especially on the service side. I have always volunteered with special needs athletes. I've been doing that since I was about 12 years old, so that's something I was just naturally drawn to when I came here. For Appa, my roommate's mom actually suggested that I do it, and
awesome.
the reason that I ended up sticking with Appa and becoming a lead was because I had such a great experience. My sophomore year when I went to Elizabethtown, Kentucky. And for orientation, I was kind of struggling to find a job over the summer, my junior year, and I decided to apply for it, and I got it. And I think that we never had orientation as seniors, and a big thing for me was I was very curious what that looked like and how I could learn more about the community we have here.
Yeah, I was so jealous that they seemed like orientation is such a nice transition into your time at BC, and I was so jealous that we didn't really have that. We were in Zoom rooms.
Yeah.
So
when we were doing the training and all of that, I was getting sad. I was I could have really used this during my first weeks here, and so it was awesome just be a part of that and give back to that, even though we didn't have it.
Yeah. Going back to service for a second, I found out today that 90% of BC students do some form of service. Does that stat surprise you? Not surprise you?
Surprises me a little bit. 90% is a lot. That's a big, large majority of our school, but I think it just speaks to the kind of people that come here and the kind of people you grow into as you go throughout college, and realizing that serving communities and giving back to people who've given stuff to you is a very important part of being a person and being a part of the BC community.
Yeah, totally. How have your experiences in particular contributed to your own personal growth?
I would say a big thing for me was on my sophomore year Appa trip, my leader basically sat me down and was you can go one route and just be straight in academics and on the books, because I was big into my neuroscience and all of that, and really taught me that there's so much more to BC than just the academics here, and it really pushed me to get more involved in a lot of the things that I do, especially stuff like Special Olympics and orientation.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's circle back to Appa for a moment. So for our viewers who don't know, Appa is a spring break service trip that sends volunteers to 25 different locations across the Appalachian region, and they're there to serve communities in need of housing, financial support, and educational support. What was your specific Appa trip like?
So,
and what caused you to want to lead it?
So for my sophomore year trip, I went to Elizabethtown, Kentucky. It was a habitat trip, so we worked on a house for a single mother and her family. Last year, I led a trip to the Bronx that was more focused on immigration support and educational support in the Bronx. And this year, I am going to Summersville, West Virginia, and we are going to be doing housing repair. There's been a lot of flooding in the area, so that's a big point of concern for us, and it's going to be a great time.
Out of the two trips you've been on so far, does one stand out more? Do you prefer one?
I think the Bronx trip stands out a lot more for me. I think being a leader is a very different experience than being a participant, especially your relationship with your co-lead. My co-lead last year was Margot Galligan, who's one of the co-directors for Appa this year, and just being able to be more ingrained in the Appa community, just having more resources, being able to give back to student leaders who gave back to me, and being able to just follow that tradition has been very special for me.
That's amazing. Did you like the group that you initially went with on your first trip? Because I know when you're a co-lead, you get a lot closer with your leads as you prepare and for that trip, and you're getting ready to make the students bond. But when you're thrown into a group with people you've never met before, was it easy to bond? Do you find that the trip and the service brought you closer together?
Yes, I think it's a very special part of Appa is that they really try and make it so that everyone you're going on a trip with, you don't have like a direct connection to, or you don't have like
Oh,
a
I didn't know
relationship
that.
with. Yeah. So that's like a big thing is like we'll go through the rosters and like figure out like if you know someone, we'll try and switch you off. And again, when you're out in the Appalachian region and you're all living together for the whole week, I think it's just like very easy to bond with everyone, and especially like the reflections are geared towards the service, but also just like growing as a person and like growing as a community. So a lot of like great relationships I have formed through Appa throughout the years.
That's awesome. What was one of your biggest takeaways from the trip, if you had to pick one or two?
One of my main takeaways was just how much love everyone has for each other, and that even like through like hardship, and again a lot of Appa's focus on like internally reflecting on yourself and your life through the service, and just being able to connect with those people and form those bonds is probably the most special part, like the thing I take away the most.
Was it difficult adjusting back to campus afterward? Did you have a difficult time maintaining those relationships, or did they continue to flourish?
I think some of the relationships just naturally form, especially like if they're in your grade or you do other things like with them throughout your years here, that you'll find some of them naturally. Others you have to kind of care for and tend to a little bit more.
So, how, when you're preparing for the service or when you're on the trip, does the reflections look? I want to know how you learn more about yourself by doing service for others.
So the reflection space is basically will be at the end of the night after a day of service. We'll have it in a separate area. We'll have like music, a little lights going on,
Awesome.
and you'll start just by journaling and just writing down about your day. I think journaling is very important. I think everyone should do it. And then we'll get into more like pointed questions about the service, about how it more informs your life. And again, I think that it's very easy to fall into the BC bubble and just like stay in this community. But when you go out and like see other people and other struggles and what people deal with on a day to day, that it gives your own life more perspective, and you can take from that and be able to problem solve and be able to get through your days and get manage your stress, knowing that
Yeah.
people deal with this all around the world in all different forms.
That seems like really good habit building for when you're back. Is there any like formal meeting once the trip is ended when you guys are back on campus?
You'll have a post-trip reflection basically a couple days after the trip, and then we have one big general meeting called Unpacking Appa, where a few trips will come up, a few select participants will come up and just share a story about their week and like how it's informed them and how they feel coming back to campus. And I think that's like very special. I also think that it's very interesting to come back to campus when you've gone on this trip and you've made all these connections and bonds that you didn't have before, where a lot of other people are coming back usually from like a vacation or some like relaxing experience. And I think it's just like a very like there's a major duality to like the people who come back from Appa versus the people who are going on like a traditional spring break trip.
Yeah, totally. Something I've been thinking about recently that one of my friends taught me is that there's a difference between pleasure and enjoyment. So pleasure is to kind of go through life very passively, and enjoyment is like, you know, more fulfilling and you're working for something. So the way I would kind of distinguish maybe your spring break versus the average students here would be maybe they're going after pleasure and you get to leave that trip even though you're a little more drained, feeling more fulfilled, and you really got to enjoy it. So I think that's something super, super special. Before we move on from Appa, I want to ask, is there any favorite memory from the trip that stands out? Any funny moments?
There was one day in the Bronx where it just rained and it did not stop raining, and we were walking through the city, we were going on the subways, and I think just like usually I don't like the rain. I don't like to go outside when it's raining. And it was just like you just had to power through it and get through it, and we were all together and just doing it. And I think that like it speaks a lot to like the atmosphere and just like being like unrelentingly like joyful and like enjoying the experience no matter like what's going on around you.
I love that so much. Okay, so you mentioned before that you're an orientation leader. A lot of students who go here recommend BC to prospective students, but I think it's a totally different level to want to spend your summer as an orientation leader trying to ensure that everyone's transition here is like very, very smooth. How has that role deepened your understanding of BC and your ability to guide others? Now that the summer's over, like how do you apply it?
I think that, again, we touched on it a little bit, that like we didn't have orientation, and that was something that struck my curiosity just because I wanted to experience that, even if it was in the leader form. what I've taken away from it is that really the idea of meeting people where they are. Everyone comes to college, usually they're going through something or they're trying to figure out how they're going to transition into here, and being able to just like get onto their level and be able to understand their problems and their concerns about the school has been like very rewarding to me, and like being able to ease concerns and make people like love this place has been very special to me, and that was a very special part of the summer.
Did it end up bringing you out of your shell a bit? I feel like everyone I know who is an orientation leader is so outgoing and high energy all the time, where I have so much respect for you guys, but was it like a little draining at points? Do you want to talk about that?
I would say yes, especially like once you're done with the orientation, it's over 3 days, and you get to that end of that third day, and you're definitely a little like socially drained. You've talked to a ton of parents, you've answered so many questions. For me, one of the most rewarding things that I did during orientation was I gave an identity monologue, just more about like my personal health and my mental health, and being able to like touch students with that and ease their concerns about like whether they're struggling with their health or their mental health was very important to me. And even if it just that reaches one person in that whole crowd that I was doing that speech for, very means a ton to me. Really brought me out of my shell public speaking wise. I'm not usually a huge like public speaker, but again, forcing myself into that position and wanting to be like a resource for everyone has really made me much more outgoing, much more extroverted. So
that's a really brave thing to do, just objectively, especially if it's, around like your mental health and stuff. So you shouldn't pat yourself on the back for that. Any orientation group specifically you want to shout out, or any good memories from orientation?
Not a specific group. I love all of my freshmen equally. So I think that just like one of my favorite moments from orientation is that last we have this skit called Superfan, which is like where we teach them a bunch of the chants for like the VC football games, the hockey games. And after that's done, we basically all go out into the Rob Sham lobby and are just like playing music and are like letting people go, and like everyone's like hugging each other and it's like, oh, thank you so much. Very special moment when it's like, again, I think it's very cathartic to be like, you've completed another week or another session of the orientation, and like hopefully it was success, hopefully it was like a growth, like growing for everyone involved, like not just the freshmen there but also like the leaders as well.
Yeah, totally. So since freshman year, there's been a lot of time, and now we're seniors. Senior year can bring about a lot of uncertainty. I know I'm feeling a lot of anxiety myself. How are you feeling about this transition?
I would definitely say I'm stressed, still applying for jobs, still trying to find something, my plan for post-grad. But I think what really grounds me is just being in the moment here. And I know that's like, it can be hard when you're like 1 foot in, 1 foot out at BC, it feels like sometimes. But just enjoying everything that is left and trying not to think as much about the stress and about what's going to come after has been very helpful for me.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on my next question very well. A lot of people seem to be focused on the downsides, but what do you think is going to be the most exciting part about leaving BC? What about the next step in life are you looking forward to?
I think for me, just like growing more as a person. I think self-love and practicing that has been something I've struggled with throughout BC, and just being able to look back on everything that I've done and all the accomplishments and everything I've built here is something that I will hold very dearly, but also just being excited to be able to, I don't know, go to a new place. And I love Boston. I've never been here before BC, but again, just continuing that and being able to move to a new city or meet new people. And I think again, it's just like this chapter of life is closing, but like there's so much more that's like going to come out of it, and like so much more I've gained from having this experience.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of time we forget that BC is setting us up for what's next, and sometimes this feels like, oh my God, this is the end, but like we are going to be so prepared for the next step, and the whole point of being here is to make the most out of, our careers and our future. So I think it's really important to have that kind of mindset. And I'd imagine that after being an orientation leader and Appa and meeting new people all the time, like you're going to be just fine meeting amazing friends and all that stuff.
I've bought into the saying cura personalis, developing the whole self. I think that BC does a great job of that, and just like, it's not just about academics, and it's not just about like having a social life, but it's also about being involved and giving back to the community, and just like developing your entire like person, and like being more sure of yourself and more comfortable of who you are.
Is there anyone at BC in your experience who's helped you become more comfortable in yourself? I know you've probably been a role model for a lot of underclassmen here, but is there any mentor you've had in your time here that's helped you develop the whole person?
One mentor that I think that I've gained here that I'm really like, I want to continue that relationship as we go forward is one of the directors of, really all of the directors of orientation. Chris Darcy is the head director, and he is just like a light in my life, and he's always like encouraging us, being so positive. But even like the rest of the orientation staff, Emily Rabel, Matt Razik, Philip Lee, Sua Lim, Mikey Schaefer, Joe Ebert. I could go on and on about all of them. Just were so great for me, and just being like more sure of myself and being more confident in my ability to lead and like bring people together. So
That's amazing. Okay, so now thinking about life post-grad, what is something here that you're going to miss the most?
the community. I know that's like kind of like a cliche answer, but I've made a lot of great friends here. I have a great friend group here. I have great connections throughout my clubs and stuff, and just being able to like build those and strengthen those connections has been one of the most fulfilling parts of my college experience. And I'm just excited to like see how those relationships evolve even as we leave. And like, again, it's going to take a lot of effort and work to keep a lot of those relationships, but I'm very like looking forward to that. So.
It's amazing. Have you noticed like a transition since we were underclassmen in the sense of community that you feel at BC on a day-to-day basis?
I think so. I think as you get older, it becomes like when you come here and like people are already very like set, like upperclassmen are like very like sure of themselves and in their like involvements and are very dedicated, that it can be a little overwhelming to be like, oh, I don't know any of these people. But I think as you age and as you just meet more people and become more ingrained in the community, you appreciate people more and you find it easier to make the connections because you yourself are able to understand BC and understand where people are coming from.
Yeah. Is there any advice you want to give to our viewers on how they can make BC a better community?
I think it all just starts with yourself and just like being confident in yourself and like giving yourself grace and love is really just like, that's like the foundation of everything that you will be able to build here, and everything you'll be able to do is just being sure of yourself.
I totally agree. I'm reading The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins right now, and part of the book that I was reading last night talks about being the most confident person in a room, even if it feels like you're faking it, and like being the first one to say hello, being the one to give a compliment, being the one to initiate plans. Like, I think it's very easy when BC doesn't feel like your place yet to just get in your head and like sit in your dorm when it's like, nope, go to co-row and tell the person next to you like their jeans and ask if they want to go on a walk later. Like, you really need to initiate. And I've definitely found this, like, once you start putting yourself out there more, even though like that's what people's parents tell them to do, like, you put yourself out there, say hello. Like, it's truly the only way to make this place feel like your own. That's when you're going to be walking through the quad, smiling at more people, and like you'll generally just feel more whole and a lot happier, I think.
Yeah, and just don't BC look away, people.
Do not
say hi to
BC.
everyone.
Exactly.
Say hi to every single person you see.
So if you could give advice to your freshman self based off our conversation so far, what would you tell him?
I think I would just tell him not to worry as much. I think I came here with a lot of like stress and anxiety about like the person I wanted to become, the things I wanted to achieve, and that not all of that has been achieved, but I think that just being able to like give yourself grace and just be able to be kind to yourself is the most important thing you can do in college. College can be a very isolating experience. I didn't know anyone when I came here. I'm the only person in my high school to ever come to this college, and I think that when you realize that you're not alone in that, and that you have to battle yourself a little bit and challenge your negative thoughts, is where you really be able to be yourself and be confident in who you are and be able to achieve great things and be involved and keep up with your studies. So
yeah, I think you made a really good point. A lot of people come here, especially I can imagine like as a STEM major, with kind of like a lineup of how they think their college experience is going to go and like milestones that they're going to achieve. And from my own experience, I feel like I left not achieving so far things I thought I was going to, but I've also achieved so much that I didn't think I could, or was like not even in my like wheelhouse at the time. So I think you're right, just like continuing to develop your own person, and it's not a bad thing ever to backtrack or pivot to something else. Like, it's the day-to-day things that you do to challenge yourself that might change your mindset or change what you want to do, and you'll achieve a lot more than you think you can.
And I think a good example of that, and it just happened this weekend, was that I did the Sasa Culture show with a bunch of my roommates and my friends, and we did the senior dance, and like, I don't dance. I've never danced before. Like, I think that's something that, like, again, like, it's not in your plan. You don't come here and be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna dance. But like, it just happens, and it's like fun, and it's like you're just with your friends and you're doing something you enjoy. So I think that, like, being able to have those unscripted moments, or just like stray off the path that you have set for yourself, is like, it can be important to like have those little moments and have those little memories that just encapsulate your experience.
Yeah, I think those will probably be the things that we look back upon the most, that make us probably feel the most warm. So it's really special. Okay, so if you're ready now, I have some rapid fire questions for you.
Let's do it.
Favorite spot on campus?
Ooh. Gaston Commons.
Early bird or night owl?
Night owl.
One thing you can't live without?
Reese's Pieces.
Okay, if you had to change your major today, what would you change it to?
Boring, but I'd probably just be a bio major.
What's your go-to comfort food?
Reese's Pieces.
Okay,
Honestly.
You can watch one movie for the rest of your life. What movie are you watching?
The Shawshank Redemption.
Favorite BC tradition?
It's new, but the Running of the Gingers. I love that one.
That is such a good one.
I'm very excited for that day.
One word to describe your senior year so far.
Chaotic.
Chaotic. I like that. I feel like that's
chaotic.
really true. That's all I had planned for today. I just wanted to thank you not only for coming on today, but to go back to what you said before about the BC Look-Away thing and making campus feel a little brighter. We've known each other, I think, since freshman year, and even though we've never had the same friend group, I feel like you're a person who's always smiled or waved. And what we were talking about before, like, you're just one of those people that makes this campus feel a little bit brighter every single day. So I just want to thank you for being, a good friend.
I appreciate that.
Of course. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.